What could possibly go wrong?
I'm Beth McDonough.
I'm Tammy Moon.
This is the show that celebrates life's best curveballs. When things go sideways, we laugh. And when it really hits the fan, we grow. Buckle up. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, Tam, what could possibly go wrong?
Where do we start?
Hey, I'm Beth.
And I'm Tammy. And welcome to
What Could Possibly Go Wrong? Today, we have a juicy topic for you, very juicy. We're talking about sex today, or the lack thereof. And that happens sometimes, of course, when the spark between partners doesn't really line up anymore.
So we're talking about mismatched libido. It's a common issue in relationships and also one of the most misunderstood. Our guest today is an expert in women's sexuality who is licensed in helping couples reconnect, communicate, rediscover desire. Susan Morgan Taylor believes sex isn't just about performance, it's about presence.
She is also the creator of the Pleasure Keys Retreat for Couples, and she hosts a podcast of her own called Sex Talk Cafe. So if you're in a relationship that feels a little bit off, or you're just curious about the quest for extraordinary sex, this episode is for you. And Susan joins us now live. Hi, Susan. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait for our conversation today. This is so fun. And I love that y'all just reached out and we just jumped in and we're ready to roll. This is going to be so great. I can't wait.
We are definitely your target market.
And we have had more fun preparing to talk with you, and we have questions.
We've got questions.
We have
right
questions. And don't you think it's one of these funny things as we get older? There's just certain things our parents didn't prepare us for. Nobody told us what it's like to get to menopause. There's not a lot of information. At least I didn't get it. And so we come into this phase of life going, what?
Why?
Why is this happening to me? And so if we're feeling this, we know other people our age are feeling it, and you were just this perfect person to enlighten us and all of our viewers and listeners. Let's just tell us everything, Susan.
And I will share with you what I know. And I have to say, I share some of that. I think so many of us women feel so confused and we hit that midlife transition. And I'm included in that, even as a sex therapist. It's amazing how little we are prepared for that major life transition. And I feel like the default on that is just take hormones, right? That's right out of the gate, just go on hormone. And that can work really well for a lot of women. So I'm not discounting that, but I know that there's also other things about menopause. It's not just about put some more hormones in the body. It's an amazing transition spiritually, sexually, psychologically. It is a very profound shift that we go through. And I think we need to have more supports out there for us as women, and it'd be great to have a little more foresight on what actually is going on with our bodies. When things start to change and the weight, me personally, my weight has fluctuated all over the place, and it's been what is going on?
And how do we keep our guys informed so they know what to expect?
They don't know that we sometimes feel like we want to kill something. That's a really new feeling.
Well, she liked me yesterday, and today she's roar.
Yes. Yeah. It's quite a ride. And I know that for me, in terms of what I offer, it's really become an area of passion for me in terms of the sexual vitality piece, because I know that I did not want to become one of the women who becomes postmenopausal and suddenly sex hurts, or you're dried out all the time, or your libido just goes out the door. I really was determined to find a pathway before I went all the way through to the other side of menopause to maintain what I had to keep my sexual vitality alive. And so that's a space that I'm really interested in right now. And I'm having an offering for women, a course that I'm launching in January to help women with that. And even if you are postmenopausal and you've already lost some of what you used to have, the beautiful thing is we can get that back. And we can do it without having to rely on hormones or supplements or expensive products. And also, I was watching another clip. It was a group of women like us right now talking about this. And they were like, oh, the self-care, it's so stressful and all this stuff I have to do just to feel normal. And it doesn't have to be that way. And so I'm really excited about the course that I'm launching in January. That's really going to be something that's pleasurable and not another thing you have to put on your to-do list, but really a ritual where we give deeply to ourselves. So many of us have given to everybody else our whole lives. And most of, though not all of us, but a lot of our kids are usually older by this stage of life. They can be a little more independent. And it's time that we make time for our own pleasure and give to ourselves deeply. And the cool thing with that is our partners and family benefit from that as well. When we're alive and we feel good and we're not shut down in our sexuality, everybody is happier.
And that's what we want on this earth. So I've had some friends say after 40 that sex just loses its intrigue to them. I'm in my 50s, getting closer to 60 now, and I'm just a little horn dog. What's the difference?
And we talk about this. I'm like, some of our friends that we talk, we're like, once we got past menopause, we're like horny little girls. And fortunately, my husband is loving that. But I think we're a little surprised by that too, like these phases that we go in and out of.
Yeah, with the study, there's a study, and I have read so much over the years. I don't quote necessarily the exact study, but I know that there is a study that was done. It might have been the Height Report, which is really famous. It might have been that one, but I'm not for sure. But they found that it was only 50% of women at menopause or post-menopause who report a decline in their sex drive. The other 50% either report they stayed about the same or they had an increase. And so
Interesting.
let's have that conversation. Let's have the conversation with the women that have an increase in sex drive or who don't go through the decline. So I think that that's a really wonderful thing. And yet there's this myth out there that we all just go into the sexual decline, right? And we all just dry up and we lose interest and nobody wants it anymore. Now, I know there are some women out there where that is the case. They just completely lose the drive for it. And some people are okay with that. But for the women who are not okay with that, what I would like to say is there is a way to get that back online. There are things that we can do to get that back online if it's been lost.
Like what? Give us some tips.
Yes.
We want the juicy details, Susan.
Please tell us. Yes. So some of the things that I teach are, so I'm a somatic therapist, meaning I use the body. It's really bringing the body into, body becomes sort of our compass, the thing that we use to let us know what's really going on. Instead of just analyzing something up in the head, we're really getting wisdom and information from the body. And so body-based practices such as what I call feminine sexual yogas, where we learn how to strengthen and tonify our vagina.
Oh,
It's so much
go on.
so we don't tend to think about that, right? A lot of times it's easier just to think about, let's just take a pill or put some cream down there and that'll take care of it. And that's okay if that works for you. But I know for me, like, I don't want to be dependent on external things. And there's so much that we can do that doesn't necessarily even require a physical product. I know a really popular practice, if you have ever heard of the yoni egg practice, are y'all familiar with what that?
No.
No.
Mm.
Get us out of our shell, Susan.
It's the yoni egg is like a gem. It's made out of a solid stone in the shape of an egg. I don't have mine handy, or I would show it to you on the camera right now. And it's used to strengthen and tonify and create dexterity in the vagina. And it helps with sexual vitality and keeping the energy. In the Western sexology, I think the thing that's really missing is this concept of energy, right? Which you get in some of the Eastern traditions like Taoism and Taoist sexuality. Energy is an aspect of sexuality. Taoist sexuality is also looking at they have the two forms of energy. There's Shen and Jing. And Jing is the raw sexual energy. And one of the practices is learning how to refine that into more spiritual energy. So not to get too esoteric and deep, but let's just talk with that aspect that our sexual drive is our life force energy. The word libido really just means life force, or that drive or lust for life. That's really what that means. And what's that referring to? It's not just the desire to have sex, but it's our desire to be fully alive. And so these practices help to revive not just the musculature of our bodies and our vaginas, but also the energy that's flowing through all of our cells. That's an aspect of our libido and our sex drive and our desire to connect intimately. I look at sex really as just connection. It's not just sticking something in a hole, not to be crass. I'm a little crass. If that's not okay, just
I'll bring it, please.
Right.
reel me in if I get too far out there.
I have been watching some of your posts online on social media, and a few things really struck out to me. And one of them being that having an orgasm or sexual pleasure is already within you.
Yes. We have a myth out there that somebody else gives us pleasure. And you hear it a lot in the language. Oh, like I gave her an orgasm, or I'm not able to give her an orgasm. So there's all this programming around like it's the man's job to give her the orgasm. And why isn't she orgasming? I must not be a good lover. And then I think as women also, we tend to buy into that idea that he's responsible to give me pleasure. He's responsible to be the one to bring me to climax. And we really forget, we don't understand that what pleasure really is and what orgasm really is. It's our ability to respond to sensation. It's our capacity to be present and aware and sensitive and responsive to sensation in our body. That sensation, it's called direct pleasure. We have two ways of experiencing pleasure. One of them is called direct pleasure, and that is direct from the nerve endings in the skin up to the brain. Our ability, our capacity to be responsive, which has really actually nothing to do with another human being, other than when you're in a partnered situation, how you're being touched, if you're being touched, where you're being touched, when you're being touched is another aspect of it. All those things absolutely factor in to the equation. But if we don't have a good access to our own capacity for that direct experience, meaning I'm present in my body, I'm able to notice sensations in my body, I'm not up in my head, I'm not worrying about what do I look like, what do I sound like, what is he thinking, is he having a good time, where are the kids, what am I doing tomorrow? I'm not up here, but I'm just really, really, really present. That's how we start to cultivate that direct route. I'm able to be present in the body, to notice, and then to really soften towards and relax into that sensation. That literally is the pathway of orgasm. And that's not anything anyone can give us. It's a skill that we cultivate on our own, It's within us. We don't have to become dependent on somebody else for that.
So we can practice at home, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely, we can practice at home. It sounds like maybe you have a story to share about that.
Oh, there are a few of them out there. That's a great catch, though. Okay, so let me ask you about this. This is something else I heard you say, and I was like, wow, it was an aha moment that it takes on average men from 2 minutes to 7 minutes to orgasm, but women on average 20 minutes, maybe even more.
Yeah, so the study is, it depends on which study you consult out there in the world. And I think even since this one's been out, there's others. So it's between 2 and 7 minutes of intercourse because of the male ejaculation happening within that time frame. And I think I just actually was listening to a podcast with a urologist who was really brilliant, and she quoted 5 or 6 minutes. So that kind of falls right in the middle of that 2 to 7. So there's probably some other studies out there. Again, it depends on which one you consult, but let's just say 2 to 7 minutes is the average time of the male ejaculation. And as we know, typically when the ejaculation happens, typically that's the end of the sexual act because the erection is lost, and we have a whole letdown of different kinds of hormones that kick in. It's the prolactin comes online after a climax, and that's the part that says, I think I'm done. I think
I'm going to go to sleep now.
Yeah, I'm going to roll over and go to sleep. Meanwhile, we're left hanging.
Yes. And so the studies also have shown that for on average, now that 21 minutes or more of foreplay is really just the average amount of time that the woman's body in general tends to need to really get warmed up and be fully ready for penetrative sex, where the woman would be consistently orgasmic during the sexual. And I'm assuming that means penetrative sex, because as we know, that actually, this is interesting too, like most women more easily orgasm from manual or oral stimulation, from clitoral stimulation than from penetration. I get it.
Guilty.
Yeah, it's actually my belief that all women have the capacity to reach orgasm through penetration. It's just a pathway. That's really all it is. And we have access to different types of orgasm that isn't all about the clitoris. Nonetheless, let's just stick with this 21 or more minutes. That's really what they have found that the woman in general needs so that she will be consistently able to climax during penetrative sex. Now, it depends on the woman. That's not every woman. Some women though might need longer than that. Some women might only need 3 minutes. Some women might need an hour. And it's really about learning our bodies and learning how to slow down to pay enough attention to knowing what does my body feel like when I'm really a full yes to penetration. When I'm really ready for it, it's a different state than when I'm just a little bit wet or maybe a little bit aroused. And most of us never give ourselves the
The time.
Right.
yeah, we can talk about what that is.
Susan, okay, tell me about this unicorn, this full body orgasm.
Yes.
Tell me about this unicorn.
Spill everything.
What is that?
What is that?
My gosh. First of all, our bodies are amazing and we have the ability really to have all different types of, and I'm going to call them orgasmic experiences because I think when we hear the word orgasm, we confuse that with climax. And climax is really just one type of orgasm. It tends to be the more what's called a masculine orgasm or linear. We could say linear, right? You kind of build, big explosion, you drop off the other side and it's done.
And then you go to sleep.
Yeah. In which they're wonderful, but both men and women have the ability to experience different orgasmic states and orgasm in different parts of the body and they feel very different. And so I think that's really the challenge is understanding that if you're looking for a full body orgasm, it's a different pathway than the climax or the more traditional linear clitoral orgasm. It's a different pathway. It's a pathway of relaxation and the skill of being present in the body and just noticing sensation. It's really about slowing down, embracing and allowing everything to be exactly as it is and saying yes to the moment. Which is a little
Go on.
lot of times with a clitoral orgasm, usually that's an easier type of orgasm for most women to access, which is why it's the more popular and more well-known one, because it doesn't require quite as much level of relaxation and surrender and a trust in our own body. So the other types of orgasm typically require a shifting of our awareness, where we're holding our attention, and this ability to really let go of a goal, of any kind of a goal, not having the goal of trying to get anywhere. And so the full body experience that was kind of what got me on my path to become a sex therapist. I had one of these experiences when I began my own exploration, my own sexual journey, of really wanting something different for my sexuality. I had a moment where during a self-pleasure session where I just had this wave of pleasure, of energy that started in the bottom of my feet and rolled up through my whole body. And my hands were vibrating. My face was like tingling and numb. And I just felt like, what is going on? And all this pleasures rolled up through the core of my body, shot out my heart. All this love was just pouring through me. And I was by myself, mind you. I was not in a relationship at the time. This was back in 2011. And I really realized at that moment that pleasure, love, and orgasm, these are things that exist within me. Isn't anything that I had to get from someone else. I didn't have to grab onto a relationship to try to get love or put all the pressure on some man to come in and be like this sexual rock star because I didn't know my own pathway. I now knew my own pathway. And it's really true that it's really just a pathway that we learn how to access rather than some kind of goal where we try to get somewhere. And that's the paradox of it.
And it sounds like the journey is part of the fun. What would you tell women who are embarrassed to talk about it and certainly feel vulnerable bringing it up with their partner?
Yeah. I mean, it's the endemic. It's what we had. It's endemic in our culture to not talk about sex because there's just so much shame really across the board to varying degrees. I think all of us have some shade of shame around sexuality that at some point or another we have to confront that. If we want something different for ourselves and for our relationship, we have to be willing to confront that within ourselves, and we have to be able to talk about it. And so that's really sometimes too, it's a great thing. Some people don't even know that a sex therapist is a thing. So I would say in those situations that you could reach out to a professional to help you talk about it if you just don't really know how. But we absolutely have to start telling the truth around what are we really wanting and needing in sex. What's really the experience that I'm having, what's really the experience that you're having, because it never brings us to more connection and more pleasure if two people are not speaking truth. If the truth isn't being spoken, it doesn't create more of what we want, which most people want more passion and more connection. At the end of the day, that's really what we want: deeper connection and more passion. And the truth will get that for us.
Isn't it tricky though? I think, especially if you've been in a relationship a long time and you reach this place, I love my spouse, but how do we initiate this conversation where it doesn't either take away whatever romance may be there or make each other feel like, so all these years you've been unhappy with our sex life, and how to not make it a bigger thing than it needs to be. Like, let's just can expand it rather than it sucked for years. Now I'm finally going to say something. I think that would be a very delicate topic to have, particularly for a longer relationship.
I absolutely agree. But here's the thing. Do you want to continue to create a future based on an untruth, or what I would call a lie? You're lying to yourself and to your partner also. I'm not saying you specifically, Tammy, but if we're doing that, we're creating a relationship based on an untruth. And if we continue to withhold what's true, we're going to continue to build a future based on untruth, which always leads to disconnection and usually less happiness. And what is true is when we really make a commitment to start to speak what's true, it is probably, if that's the case and it's been that way for your whole relationship and you've never spoken up, yeah, it's going to rock the boat. It's probably going to rock the boat. But what I would say to that is to work with a therapist. Find someone that can help you with some communication structures. That's one thing I do that with my couples. I give communication structures. I can teach that. There's a lot of therapists out there though that should be able to help you with this, to learn how to have conversations where there's an actual structure that you're using that can hold some of the emotional intensity of the conversation. And that's really just, it's a learned skill, and it might not be great, like it might not be what your partner wants to hear, but it's likely that your partner also hasn't been as thrilled as you think he or she has been.
And to that point, Susan, a number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I was in a relationship and the man I was dating was about 15 years older. And the last year of our relationship, there was no sex. He completely lost his libido. And so we went to a therapist and who specializes in this. And she asked us a question, do you self-pleasure at home? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, no. And she followed up with, do you want to? And he said, no, I'm over it. And so I knew right then our relationship was headed for a dead end because we had very different libidos and expectations. Can you bridge that gap? Is it possible to bridge that gap?
I think it is possible to bridge that gap, but I think it also depends on what's really going on in that situation. And so I think if it's a kind of situation where somebody has had a really strong libido and things were working, but then there's something like, and he was older than you, so it could be men go through a midlife change as well. Like they go through the decline in testosterone, and that can impact sex drive is primarily dependent on, or one of the factors of sex drive in men is the testosterone. So if that plummets, that can absolutely influence that desire to be intimate. So sometimes there's the physiological aspect that is happening. It's not always a physiological thing, but sometimes it is. And so we want to look at all of it. We want to take a holistic approach. There can also be emotional and psychological factors that can happen for women as well as for men that can cause a loss of desire to be intimate. And so again, if we're not able to have good, honest communication in a way where it feels safe and doable, where it's not exploding into an argument every time and just causing more damage than good, it's really hard to get back on the same page. And we have to be willing. You have to have someone who's at least willing. So if that was the case, what I would say, Beth, is was he even willing to look at the issue? And if not, then that makes sense that the relationship didn't last, because if you're not willing and you've got one partner that really desires that, but you're not even willing to look at it, how do you work with that? How do you work with that? Because there's absolutely solutions to that problem.
That's what happened, though. He was done. So it was interesting. Tim, I have a question for you and also for you, Susan. Growing up in my house, and Tammy has heard these stories, my parents were very open about everything. Let me just say that. And we grew up talking sex. I grew up watching my parents run through the house naked, my dad chasing my mom. And I was like, oh my God, this is so not normal. I'm going to need therapy one day. And they would laugh and laugh, and right up until the end. They're both passed now. But did your household talk about sex, Tammy, or did you kind of learn about it on the fly or on the street?
No, we didn't. My first memory of sex was I was grade school, and I was going down to the park with two boys about my age that my mom babysat in daycare. And my mom said, when you get to the park, if any boys or any men give you any trouble, just yell rape. And I'm like, but what does that mean? What does that mean? I don't know what that word is. I'm probably 9. I had no idea. So I'm supposed to just yell this word and everybody knows that means leave her alone. And so I'm like, okay. And so I'm walking down to the park with the boys. And of course, boys know all of this stuff. Wherever they learn it, they seem to know more than I did. And they told me a little bit, and I didn't really get it because I was still little. But that was kind of like my first thing about learning. But I didn't really get any sex talk
at home from.
And my parents divorced when I was in junior high, which is the peak of when you're trying to figure this stuff out.
Right.
And yeah, there wasn't a lot of, I remember when I got to that stage where I got my period, I just was afraid to tell my mom, not because she was going to have an issue with it, but I didn't want to add to her plate because she was newly divorced, and I didn't want to give her something else to worry about or something else that she had to go deal with. And so I kind of had to figure out how to manage that, and I'd get things from the school nurse or from my friends. And so, yeah, I feel like there was a lack of really understanding what was going on.
And how do you, and Susan, how do you feel now? Do you feel like people are more receptive to your message?
I think we're going through a bit of a sexual revolution. I think this topic has really become much more acceptable and it's being more talked about. We're still shadow banned on social media, but we'll save that for another.
That's another episode.
There's a lot more resources out there now, I think, that than there were when we were kids. And what you experienced about this, so yeah, that's cool in a way. I hope that was a positive experience for you.
It was.
Don't have, yeah, if our parents are uncomfortable, it's going to translate into the kids. We're going to take that on. And I grew up in a family that was we didn't talk about it like at all. At all. And it didn't do any kind of a service to me to have it just ignored because we're sexual beings. So I really tried to do something different with my kids. I have two daughters who are now grown in their early 20s, but I really believed that we have so much curiosity when we're really little. That's when we start asking. I remember asking my mom when I was maybe like 6 years old, like, how are babies made? And like the answer I got was pretty much the equivalent of you just ask the stork and the stork brings the baby. And that's pretty much what she told me. You just ask God and God gives you a baby. And I'm like, well, that's really cool. I'm just going to pray to God and see if God will bring our family a baby. Like I like no education at all. And I was like 6. So I didn't even have any concept of pregnancy or it comes out of a woman, like none of that. I was like, oh, you just pray to God and you get a baby. That's cool. Let's get another baby for our family.
But it's a generational thing, do you think? Like maybe at the age that we were at, it just wasn't as talked about. And now I think we are much more apt to probably talk to I remember having the conversation about masturbation with my son in middle school, and he was horrified. But I knew I had to have the conversation, so he knew it's okay. It's normal. If you're going to do it, just go do your thing.
Out when he has a wet dream and he's, oh my God, so many men, I hear that. Like their first wet dream, they thought they were broken. That is not an abnormal experience for a lot of men, and it just shouldn't be that way. And I really believe that we should talk to our kids as early as they start asking. And my kids started asking when they were maybe around 4 or 5 years old. And I'm just like flat out just told them. I drew pictures. I'm like, this is how it works. Here's the man, here's the woman. Like, you know, I did not understood all of it, but at least I was not like, going into it was awkward for a minute, but then it's just, they're so curious when they're young. And when they get to be teenagers, now it's awkward and it's weird, and you get them while they're young. And there are resources out there. There's a lovely organization. I'm on their email list. I think it's called Sex Positive Families. And they have wonderful resources for how to talk about sex with your kids and how to do it and when's a good time and what's appropriate, what's maybe to be better saved for later when they're a little older, and how to do it. It's just great. So I recommend that resource for anyone who's listening who feels at a loss for how to normalize this conversation for your kids.
And just in the last couple of years, I'm single right now, but I've been in and out of a couple of relationships. And it's interesting. The men I'm dating are in their 50s or early 60s as well. And the things that they are open to trying now and that they've shared with me and opened my eyes, I'm like, this is fun. Once you get past the menopause and the after effects, sex can be even more fun because I don't know, are we just comfortable with our bodies now?
Or we just don't get embarrassed anymore.
Yeah, and we know what we want. We can ask for what we want.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think some of it too, when our estrogen drops a little bit, and it's interesting as women, like we actually become a lot less afraid of what other people think of us. Have you noticed that? We're like,
Oh, yes, I
Yeah.
love it.
or like, just don't mess with me, okay? Because this is how I feel right now, and I really don't care if it hurts your feelings. And the estrogen effects actually can make us be more people pleasing. It's one of the impacts of estrogen. So when that starts to decline, as it does when we get postmenopausal, we have less inhibition around just speaking up for what we want. I think that's a big part of it. And then you also look at the risk of pregnancy is also no longer on the table, and that can really free us up to enjoy our pleasure. And I have also found, and I think a lot of women who are postmenopausal or become menopausal, going through menopause or postmenopause, have reported this, that it can be a little bit easier for us to be able to have sexual relations and not have a the impact of the need to attach and the need to bond in the same way that we might have when we were a little bit younger and we had a different set of hormones coursing through our body. So there can be a real liberation that happens in that for women as we get older that can actually feel a little bit nice, like not feeling like such a victim of our need to be attached to the man, which is a natural product of our evolution as women and our biology as women. There's reasons why that happens for women chemically in our brains, the letdown of the chemical cocktail that happens when we orgasm, it causes us to bond. We get oxytocin and a whole host of other really feel good hormones, but it causes us to bond with our partner for the reasons of evolutionarily speaking in the event that we were pregnant, that we would want to be able to have the provider and the protector. We would want to bond with the father of our child for that reason. And yes, this stuff is very primitive, but we are still animals, and that's how we've evolved. And just women's liberation doesn't undo thousands of years of genetic programming and biology. So that is still an aspect of our being as women, like it or not. Men and women are different. I'm not a proponent of we're all the same. And I know that might upset some people listening, but personally, I don't want to be the same as a man. Do you? Do you?
No, no. And to that end, we're getting close to starting to wrap up. We always have kind of these three pillars at the end of our podcast about something in life that made you laugh, something in life that made you pivot, and then something in life that made you grow. And Tammy always has a great explanation for that.
So when we were putting together this podcast, this idea of what could possibly go wrong, something can go wrong and it really creates a super funny story that makes us laugh. And something can go wrong and we have to pivot. Like it's supposed to take us this direction, but we went this way and it's even better. So we had to pivot. And sometimes something can go really wrong. And that's when we learn our biggest lessons in life. So would you be vulnerable enough with our viewers and listeners to share one of your laugh, pivot, grow moments?
Okay. Oh, can it all be the same moment?
Sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God, that's a trifecta. I'd love all three in the same one.
That's a doozy.
Hey, Tammy. Hey, Beth. So I've had a chance to think about the answer to your question that I just wasn't able to find the answer for while we were live. And I want to share a story with how I got interested in helping women at the menopause transition and the postmenopause experience who are having some of those negative sexual side effects that sometimes happen when we go through a lot of the amazing hormonal and spiritual changes that happen at that stage of life. So it actually was motivated by a personal story it's funny. and but I also it really is the thing that motivated me to focus on creating my pleasure revival experience for women at midlife and beyond. So based on a personal story, let me tell you what that is. Sure. A few years after my divorce, I had an amazing lover in my life, and we had a really beautiful journey together for a couple of years. It was my first sexual experience outside of my divorce, and really had just an incredible journey with this man. And I was in my mid 30s at the time. And for a lot of women in their mid 30s, that's in a sense our sexual, like where our hormones are really through the roof for a lot of us. And our sex drive can really be like really online, like almost like it is for men when they're 18. And that was the case for me. So I was just I still am very sexual, but back then really had just no trouble with lubrication and just multiple orgasms and this really beautiful experience. That relationship wrapped up in a couple of years and it was beautiful. And we parted as friends. We both were just ready to go our separate ways. And And so we did, but about 5 or 6 years later, our paths crossed again. And he was recently single. I had been single for a little while, and we decided to let's have a hookup. Hey, we're both in the spot. We had a great connection years ago. What do we have to lose? We know each other. And during that encounter, I did not lubricate. I was dry and I could not figure out really what was going on or why. And I remember just feeling so embarrassed. I had to like reach over and dig through the nightstand drawer to try to find this bottle of lube that I really almost never needed before. No shame if anyone out there uses lube and you need it. It was never a regular part of my intimate experiences to have to rely on lube to get wet. But in this case, I was like so dry. Whereas before I had been like the Niagara Falls. And so I just remember feeling so embarrassed. Oh my gosh. And I'm a sex therapist. Like I know this stuff. And all of a sudden, here it is. This is happening to me. Like these stories that I've heard around women that I've worked with, or women who reach out to me from time to time saying, help, like sex now hurts, or it's uncomfortable, or I'm dry. What do I do? This was now happening to me. And with this man that I'd had these like through the roof amazing sexual experiences with. So I just remember that moment and just feeling, oh my gosh, a little bit embarrassed, a little bit ashamed. He was wonderful. We slapped the lube on. We made it happen, but it was nothing like these incredible erotic experiences we had had together years before. And so why I'm telling this story is because that moment was actually one of the moments that inspired me to start to create my course, The Pleasure Revival Experience. Because what I found out, that experience happened, let's see, I was in my mid-30s when I was with him. So I was like at the beginning of that perimenopausal shift where your hormones start to change and things aren't operating the way they used to. And that was really the thing that motivated me to try to figure out what can I do now so that I can reverse this. And I didn't want to go into menopause and postmenopause and have this sexual decline that so often happens to so many of us women when really I knew based on everything I knew as a sex therapist and as a woman and being involved in a lot of different spiritual practices and sexual practices, ways to keep the vitality going. I knew enough to know I know that I don't this doesn't have to be the case. And I refused to become a woman who gets dried out and lack of sensitivity. Like I did not want that to happen. So that experience actually motivated me to dig deeper and to start doing some personal practices for myself that have absolutely changed the game for me sexually, have increased lubrication, turn on, massive new orgasmic experiences that I've never experienced before. So I just wanted to share that. That was the turning point for me. It was a funny moment, and it definitely did not go as planned. But it led to some transformation for me where it got me on a path of a new journey of really discovering what can I do holistically that's not dependent on external things like creams or hormones or products to get my sexual vitality online and to maintain what I have so that I don't lose it as I go into postmenopause. So I hope that that story is helpful for your listeners and that it checks the boxes for those 3 pillars that you asked. And thank you so much again for having me on as your guest.
Is there anything else that you would like to emphasize or make sure we put out there, a message from you as we wrap up?
Yeah, I would love to leave your listeners with a couple of things. Number one, I think that this can be a really game changing question for all of us to ask ourselves and to consider. If you were 100% responsible for your own pleasure, how might you show up differently in your own life and in your own relationship? If that was true, which it is, by the way, what would that change? So, especially for couples who are listening or maybe are having that desire mismatch happening, we tend to blame the other person a lot. Like he needs to step up more. She just needs to want it more, do something, whatever, whatever, whatever. But at the end of the day, all we have is what can I do with what's in front of me right now? And whether that means I make a decision to speak truth and be vulnerable and really let my partner know what's going on, or I decide to respond in a different way. I'm taking responsibility for the experience that I'm having. So I want to leave your listeners with that. And then I'd love also if anybody is curious about understanding that libido mismatch, I have a wonderful resource that I created called the Sexual Speedometer Test, which will tell you about mismatched libido and why, and also some tips about what to do. It's a test that I created that will tell you where you are on your sexual. We have it's called the dual control model of sexual arousal. And we have a sexual accelerator and sexual brake. So there's things that put the brakes on, there's things that get the accelerator going. A lot of times when we're saying we have mismatched libido, it's really that there's a different combination of brakes and accelerators. And when we understand that, we can get out of that black and white thinking about high and low libido, and we can start to really come to the table on, okay, you've got a high brakes, how do we get your brakes off? Or your accelerators, so how do we get that running? Instead of pathologizing one or the other, the low libido partner or the high libido partner, because high libido partners also get pathologized for being too sexual, for example, or wanting it too much, or something must be wrong with you. Low libido partners also get pathologized. What's wrong with you? You should want it more. Why don't you want me? And it can really become a problem. So that's a really great resource that I would love just to offer to anybody listening who wants a copy of that. It's at sexualspeedometertest.com. You can get a copy of that. And if you guys want, I can give, or you can use the link for your show notes if you want. But a really great and easy place to start, especially it's a good way to open the conversation with your partner about this topic in a really easy way where, no one's getting offended because it's just there on paper. And look, hey, I didn't know that about me either. Isn't that interesting?
I love that.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great, ladies.
Susan, we enjoyed it. Thank you so much as well.
Thank you. And folks, if this episode hit home or made you laugh, made you pivot, made you grow, please share, subscribe to our podcast. We would love to keep having you follow us. Share with your friends. Susan has got a great message here, and I have loved this episode with you. Thank you, everybody. And
if you could, show us a little bit of love, hit like, save, subscribe. Of course, every tap helps our podcast to grow. And with that, we have one final question. What could possibly go wrong?